G'day, and hello to those who are joining us today. Before I'd like to begin, I'd like to start by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Wurundjeri people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm joining this meeting from today. And I'd also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of all the places from which anyone might be joining this meeting or watching the recording from today. And I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. His presentation is it's called The Power of Plants to Improve Wellbeing, and it's one of the public seminars that Farmwall is running this month as part of Mental Health Month, which is October in 2021. If you don't know already, at Farmwall we're urban farmers, and we're focused on both indoor and outdoor growing and bringing that urban farming into and plants into people's homes and classrooms and workplaces. And so we thought it was appropriate as part of Mental Health Month and part of our work to do a presentation like this about how good plants are for well-being and for mental health. So I'll talk for a little bit about some of the research behind why plants are really, really good for mental health and well-being. And then Elliot, who's another urban farmer at Farmwall, will talk a little bit about why microgreens are really, really good for your well-being. And that's because something that Farmwall's done a lot of in the past and doing now is growing microgreens, integrating microgreen growing into some of the technology and products that we use. So like I said, we're doing it for Mental Health Month, and also because on October 10th it was World Mental Health Day. And for a long time, for decades in fact, a lot of people spoke about why plants are really good for well-being and mental health, and why they're good for concentration, productivity and things like that, without a lot of research behind it. We're past that point now, and we're at a point where there is a lot of research, a lot of studies that have been done in the past 10 to 15 years, which show exactly what happens in our brains and to our bodies when we're around plants, and why that indicates that they are, as we suspected, very good for us. Usually when people talk about it, they talk about this concept called biophilia, which is the innate tendency that we have as humans to be around plants, and that tendency in us is something which can cause plants or feeling safe around greenery to increase our productivity, reduce stress, and also clean the air, much like plants do outside. They also clean the air inside. It was a concept pioneered by this person called Edward O. Wilson, and what he termed it as was the innately emotional affiliation of human beings to other living organisms. So basically, we want to be near living organisms, plants and animals. And that's the kind of thing that makes us feel safe and feels connected to the environment around us. We were lucky about a month ago to have Dr. Dominic Hess join us in a presentation, and Dominic spoke a lot more about what biophilia means and what it is for us as humans, what happens in our brain. And the most important thing that I wanted to share from her talk is that when we see the world around us and perceive the world around us, what we get in our eyes, it basically goes to the brain, and the first thing it hits is the amygdala, and that's shown in the diagram on the right of the slide here. That's the one little part that basically decides whether or not we're safe and whether or not we're in danger. So when you're looking at your environment around you, if you see no order and you don't see any plants, your brain will be working overtime to think, well, there's no plants, so I'm not safe. What's happening? Am I okay? And it's getting ready to trigger that fight or flight response. If you do have those things around you, familiarity around you and patterns around you, then what happens is your brain immediately, when that input goes to the amygdala, your brain instantly triggers, I'm okay and I'm safe. And then you start processing it using the other parts of your brain in the seconds following. There's like I said, there's some research that kind of highlights this concept and shows that it's not just a feeling or a suspicion that we have, but it's something that actually changes in us. I just thought I'd talk about a couple of them, of some of the more recent research, which is quite interesting. A big one is that when students have a view of greenery around them, their attention and their stress recovery is improved. This is really, really important because a lot of the time people are looking what ways can they make their classrooms more productive, what ways can they make them more safe. And this paper basically, in the research they did a survey of students who were in the same classroom conditions and given the same learning tasks and comprehension tasks, but one classroom had a view of plants out their windows and the others didn't. And the classroom that had the plants outside their window performed a lot better. Their attention was retained between concentration tasks and comprehension tasks. And when they underwent a stress-inducing task of like rapid thought recovery, their recovery from the physiological response of that, where your heart rate becomes slightly elevated and your skin starts perspiring a little bit, was a lot quicker than the students who didn't have a view of greenery. And this is not just in this setting or this trial where this was shown. This is indicative of the results that have been seen in a lot of similar trials, and that's for people in a lot of different environments, different work environments, including both indoor and outdoor work environments. So long story short, having plants around you reduces your stress. Something that's also coming up a lot in research, which kind of looks a little bit deeper in, okay, we know that plants do this, but what is it exactly about them? And can we just substitute them with pictures, or can we substitute them with patterns? What's been identified is that nature all around us, including in animals, exhibits repeated patterns. And often you can say that those patterns are in the form of fractal geometry, which is basically shapes that break into smaller shapes. So if you're looking at the fern that's in the middle of the slide here, you have that center part of the leaf that then breaks into the what looks like individual fern leaves branching off it, and then on each of those individuals it breaks up into smaller ones. If you looked even closer, it would look like it does that again. That's the pattern breaking down into smaller but repeated patterns, and that's what fractal geometry is. It's really, really evident in nature, basically everywhere, and it's really, really evident in most plants. Even if it doesn't look like it straight away, our brains are really quick at subconsciously recognizing those patterns. And if we're surrounded by those patterns, and if our brain recognizes the order around us, then it starts to slowly relax and thoughts become more ordered, and our stress responses are reduced. And it's those kind of patterns that our brain looks for basically every moment we're awake, and even when we're asleep, when it's listening for danger. It's similar to how with noise pollution, if you have a lot of continued sustained but disordered noise, your brain's working overtime to try and find order in it and pattern to feel safe and to understand it. When we're surrounded by those patterns, for example, with plants, it tells our brain to settle down. There's a couple of research papers that really highlight this really well, and one of them even show, and they're cited at the bottom of this slide, one of them even shows that that you can just substitute plants. If you can't bring plants into the environment that you want to have this effect in, you can even just use pictures. The last paper that I wanted to bring up around this research, last set of research, it's actually a number of papers that show this. If you combine nature to get these kind of effects of stress reduction, increasing your productivity, increasing your mood, reducing your anger, if you combine it with water, then that has an added effect to it, kind of like a double whammy. And some of this research suggests that the reason is that we're evolved to feel safe, not just around plants, but also around water, because we know that there's water to drink nearby, and we also know that water sustains the life around us, which means there's food nearby, which means there's shelter nearby. So yeah, a lot of these studies looked at the use of water features and plants in offices, or even the use of fish tanks with plants in offices, and they basically exhibited all similar responses, which proved, or at least affirmed, this concept of biophilia, and that those things are really good for us. I guess this is what came to mind when you think about water combined with nature. So we might feel more safe when we're around rivers or streams or ponds, which are surrounded by trees that give us shelter. It's kind of hard to replicate that in an office or in a classroom, because you can't just put a giant pond in the middle of the office or the classroom. And you can't just, build a giant fountain or a water feature in the middle of your office. A really good way to do it is fish tanks. There's a lot of research that goes hand in hand with this plant research about how having fish tanks has a similar effect, and that the action of caring for them and maintaining them has a similar effect. If you can integrate something like a fish tank into your classroom or workspace, or even just a really small water feature, even just something small on your desk, it has the same effect. The picture I've included there is of one of Farmwell's systems where you can grow aquaponics on a fish tank, and also hydroponics next to it under grow lights. The last thing I wanted to mention is that, just like a lot of things, there is strength in diversity, and that is absolutely the case with this, with everything that this research shows. We're accustomed to now producing all of our food and plants in a monoculture, so farms with rows and rows of the same plant, or rows and rows of the same trees, like plantations. That doesn't have the same effect on us that diverse surroundings and randomized nature around us does. So if you're really looking to maximize this effect, as much as it's easy to buy a lot of the same plant that you like and put them all along your windowsill, if you try a lot of different ones and you get a lot of different heights, different habits, different leaf colors, different leaf shapes and plant types, and put them in different spots around your room, and also move them from time to time, then that'll increase all of these benefits that having plants in your spaces can have. I'll throw it over to Elliot now. We'll talk a little bit about why microgreens are really, really good for your well-being.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, so I'm just going to touch on some of the benefits of microgreens, especially in regards to well-being. A lot of us know that they're really, really healthy for us in a lot of manners, but also along with that, that becomes, quite tied up in mental health as well. So I might just get you to switch over to the next slide. So in a study by the NCBI, which is the National Centre for Biotechnology Information, to examine the difference between indoor plant interaction and standard computer work, they noted physiological differences in young adults who are more comfortable and soothed when interacting with plants. And in saying this, I mean, obviously we can't all interact with plants all day, and there is a certain amount of screen time that we do have to do. But the differences were quite dramatic in terms of lowering of blood pressure, heart rate staying more stable and low as well. And in regards to that, it's just sort of a little reminder to us that, a small interaction during the day to break up our computer time can be drastically beneficial. And the beauty in microgreens is that usually, especially the way we're growing them, they are grown indoors, and they are grown usually quite close if we're working at home to our desk. Saying that, a lot of our kits as well, you can also grow them at your desk in your experiment kit. So having them right there to sort of break up your day and just sort of, to sort of put a stoppage in that monotonous cycle is something that can be really beneficial, not only, physically, but mentally is proven to sort of calm us down and bring us back. We'll jump over to the next one, thanks. So the other thing with microgreens is we know they are extremely healthy for us. They are really, really high in vitamin K, vitamin E, vitamin C. Obviously, different varieties have different benefits when it comes to vitamins, but a lot of these vitamins really help aid digestion. So this is a huge thing that they've sort of discovered more recently, is that the ability in your digestion to improve your sort of mental mood So this reduced stress and good digestion is sort of originally thought if you're feeling anxious or possibly depressed, what will happen is you will have something in, a sore stomach, and you'll feel a little bit sick in your stomach. They're now sort of studying and realizing that sometimes what you eat may give you that feeling of a sore stomach, and it may be because you haven't eaten something that's, we've all done it, something that's not beneficial for us nutritionally, and then that creates the cycle the other way. So yeah, originally it was thought you get anxious or it's something along those lines, and then your stomach hurts. Now they're realizing you eat something that technically might not be nutritionally very beneficial, your stomach hurts, that sends a signal to the brain, and then all of a sudden you start to feel a little bit depressed and anxious, and those sort of things can come up. So yeah, really important just to remember how direct our diet is to our mental state. Sometimes I feel like this is something that gets forgotten a little bit by all of us. We think, whether it be our social situations or whatever, can direct it. But yeah, food is huge, and a healthy diet is really huge when it comes to having your mood regulated. For one more, Pat. Yeah, so cooking with microgreens is the other one. So this is obviously gives you the personal farm to plate connection with your food. So it's that feeling of food security. So once we know that we can grow food, and microgreens are just so perfect for this in so many ways. I always say they're just an absolute essential for young students to have a go at, because they can be really quite easy to grow certain varieties. And with that win, you get this confidence and feeling of sort of food security of, oh, I can grow my own food. And yeah, it's been proven many times that when we can grow our own food, our mental state and that anxiety can really be released quite a lot, because we know if we have a pandemic like we've just had and we can't go to the supermarket, we know that we at least have some skill level to support ourselves and our family in a way. So that farm to plate connection is really, really, really beneficial to our mental state in many ways, especially reducing stress and anxiety. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Elliot. So now that we've kind of spoken about the what happens and how we know that it happens, we thought we'd just basically suggest what you can do to bring these kind of positive effects to either your workplace or your school or your classroom or your home, or basically anywhere. If you're an educator, and the reason that I'm starting with this is because at Farmore we do a lot of our work with schools and classrooms, trying to bring a lot of the benefits of urban farming and indoor food growing into classrooms. Something you can do is create like de-stress zones, which feature plants or water features or fish tanks in staff rooms and current common areas. And that's obviously for the benefits of teaching staff, so that you can get away from the stress of the classroom, have a bit of a moment where your brain is, instead of getting all of the random and chaotic inputs of being in a classroom, whether that be different voices and noises, or different stresses, or different demands or pressures on you as a teacher, you can go somewhere where your brain starts to find that order again in the plants around it. Something which has been done before, not on a wide scale, but it's proven to be very effective, is having sensory rooms or chill out rooms. Sometimes people call them come down rooms or de-stress rooms for students, but you can also do the same for teachers or anyone, which feature plants or even a fish tank or a little water feature. So if the classroom happens to be too stimulating of an environment or too stressful of an environment for anyone, then you can suggest that they spend a bit of time there, so that their brain can, again, if they're experiencing all that stress and anxiety, that means their amygdala is taking all the input and producing like an overspeed of fight or flight, and their ability to process what's going on around them is reduced. A bit of time out, so to speak, in a space which is surrounded by plants or has a few plants in it can really help the brain just to start working itself down from there. And the other thing is to integrate plant-based learning into the classroom. So teaching with plants, teaching students how to grow food or grow plants or care for plants on their desks or outside or in a aquaponics or hydroponics system, so that the students and also yourself as a teacher can see those plants and care for them and have that same positive benefit from actually using them physically. If you're a student, something I really, really suggest, having benefited from it significantly while I was studying, is to have plants in your study area. And you can just start with one. You don't need to have an indoor forest or like an indoor jungle all around you. Even just having one is enough for the positive effect on your brain and also on the air around you. Even one plant indoors will be able to clean the air and make it a little bit healthier for you. I personally go hard and add 20 or 30 plants to my desk, but you can just start with one. And the other thing is, even if you do have plants in your study area, leave it quite regularly. In fact, as important as it is to study a lot before a big test or exam or just in general, it is equally as important to stop studying and to stop doing these things. If you can leave your study area, it increases your productivity when you're at the study area significantly. And to increase it even more, when you leave, go and have your breaks somewhere that has plants or water features or even just food that you're growing. Again, to create that response in your mind. And what I really like to do, this is if you're more of a green thumb or you have a few plants or vegetables that you're caring for, actually do those tasks within the breaks. So if I'm studying or working a lot, after 45 minutes or an hour, I get up and I actually find a plant of mine, which I think needs a bit of care, and I water it or I prune it or I give it a bit of fertilizer or I check for pests. Not only am I doing one of my chores, which is taking care of my plants, but I'm also in the background giving my brain that patterned input, looking at the plant and looking for those patterns. The things that I've just suggested in the previous two slides for teachers and students is exactly the same for any environment where you might be working or being productive. So it's the same for office workers. Have a plant or plants in your work area, and you can just start with one. The other thing is to leave and take breaks all the time. And if you can find a space to have those breaks where there are plants or greenery, or even somewhere where you can look at those things outside, then that'll really, really improve what you get out of having those breaks. In offices, there are often corners, dark corners, light corners, window areas, dead spaces where maybe a desk was in the past or a cubicle was full in the past and isn't anymore. And I imagine that's pretty common now after COVID, with not everyone going back to the office. Those spaces are perfect for plants. If you can't fill them with an office worker, you may as well fill them with a plant that'll actually help the office workers that are there. And if obviously you might need to suggest this to your boss or to the company or whoever it is who's responsible for this thing. It's an easy suggestion to make if you're able to point out that it's actually in their best interest, because we know now that plants increase your productivity. We know that they reduce your stress. We know that they make you concentrate better. We know that they can make your time at the desk or at your job doing whatever it is you do more effective and more productive. So it's a no-brainer if you're running a business or you have employees who you want to be working better or be happier and healthier or be more productive. The answer is plants, and paying them more, but also plants. And of course, having food that you grow yourself or that someone you know has grown in your lunch. I don't have a research paper to show this exactly, but it just feels good. So if you can do that, then that's another really good thing. For everyone else, the tips are basically exactly the same. If you can grow your own food, which everyone can, it actually doesn't matter where you're living. Anyone can grow their own food. You can do it in your backyard or on a balcony. And if you don't have either of those things, like myself, I live in an apartment, no backyard or balcony, but I grow my own microgreens and salad greens indoors on my fish tank. So there are a lot of ways you can do it. You can use a setup like the ones that we sell and make it far more, one of which is shown in the picture. Or you can grow herbs and seedlings on the windowsill. You can grow sprouts in jars. There's community gardens everywhere. Community garden activation is a really, really big part of any new suburb in Australia, and also a lot of areas that are being rejuvenated. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You don't need to have a veggie patch or a backyard to do it. If you've got any dead or empty spaces in your house, and even if your house is full of things, you'll actually find there are a lot. Just corners, little spaces on benches, little spaces in front of the TV cabinet or next to the couch, in the hallway, at the front door, behind it or in front of it. There's actually a lot of different places that you can put your plants. When you walk past those places, or they're in your view when you're at home, if they're not filled with a plant or a pattern, then your brain feels a little bit uneasy about it. If the plant's there, that doesn't happen anymore, and it kind of gives your brain a break. If you're not sure where to start, the easiest thing to do is just start with one plant. Buy a plant, find a cutting from someone. If that plant dies, that's okay. All the time people say to me, oh, I can't take care of plants. I've had one plant and it died, or I've had 5 succulents and they've all died and they're succulents. If a plant dies in your care, it's a good thing, and it makes you a better gardener. Because when a plant dies, you know why, or you usually know why. When a plant stays alive, it's harder to figure out exactly what is keeping it alive. So buy a plant. If it dies, great. Get another one and keep going.